It is Thursday afternoon, East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. I'm going to talk Michigan State sports for the next hour plus as we get ready for Michigan State against Youngstown State, 3:30 p.m. Spartan Stadium. Is going to be an interesting game. Interesting talking about last week. It's still 5 days out for the Boston College game. Michigan State learned a lot in that game. Jonathan Smith called it a game of growth. I would agree with that. Areas of growth, areas of ceiling that still needs to be aspired to, which should be the case in early September. Got a lot to talk about there. SpartanMag.com. Go over there, check it out. $1 if you like Michigan State talk. Got to check it out. $1 for a week. Test drive SpartanMag.com, and we think you'll love it. If you like this stuff, you'll love that. Been covering Michigan State sports on the internet since the beginning of the internet with the Spartan Magazine, Spartan Mag crew, and we appreciate all the support, all the subscribers we have nationwide. And in the meantime, give us a like here in the channel. Give us a thumbs up, give us a like. We really appreciate that. That means so much. Also, subscribe to the channel. That means a lot. Also, we really appreciate the feedback we've been getting about these recordings, Spartan Mag Live, over the years. And we want to be doing them more often, and I pledge we're going to get there at some point. I can't believe it's Thursday already. I'm sorry this is coming so late. Yesterday was kind of crazy, a lot of things with work earlier in the week. Work, life, health, balance, have a lot of things going on. I wish we had 9 days in the week so we could do this earlier and give people more to chew on as far as Michigan State football goes. But as it turns out right now, it's Thursday afternoon. This basically ends up being a Friday football warm-up. Michigan State 2-0, getting ready to play Youngstown State. These FCS teams have not been competitive nationally. I have not watched Youngstown State yet. I'll be doing that tonight for the pre-snap read tomorrow. Been focusing on the Michigan State Boston College film and coverage over at SpartanMag.com, the articles we've been producing over at SpartanMag.com. If you're interested, go check it out. We think you will like it. What we do here at Spartan Mag Live, we get questions from Michigan State fans over at the Underground Bunker message board, which is the church of what's happening now for Michigan State sports. That is the message board that is part of SpartanMag.com. Get over there. You'll like to test drive that Underground Bunker message board as well. A couple days ago, I invited Michigan State fans to post questions at the Underground Bunker message board. We will attack those questions mailbag style. I think we'll get through 13 or 14 of those. Can't get through all 20. Maybe the leftover questions, maybe I'll answer those on the message board because I really appreciate the people taking time to post those questions over at SpartanMag.com. In the meantime, hey, we're going to tell you about Schupan early, kicking that off early. You guys have been hearing about Schupan. Schupan's a great company, Michigan company. And as you know, Michigan's recycling rate has fallen from 90% to 73% in recent years. Michiganders are squandering $105 million per year by not taking back their bottles and cans. That's hurting our environment, people. So the environment, help yourself. They're your roads, your beaches, your lakes. Let's clean up what we can with bottles and cans, taking them back. So take them back. That's the movement. That's the message. It's a message from Schupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to your Michigan State Spartans. So we're happy to have Schupan as a sponsor and a supporter here at SpartanMag.com. Really appreciate that. Appreciate all the good people in Grayling, Michigan, and all the people taking care of things up north in the great state of Michigan, the Great Lakes State. Question number 1. These are mailbag questions over at SpartanMag.com. This is from Tom in Asheville, North Carolina. He says, who is Michigan State's best assistant football coach? That was the first question posted when we went live with the mailbag. Who is Michigan State's best assistant coach? I'd say right now, I mean, there's a lot of things that can still develop in these coaches' careers. I think James Adams, the safeties coach, has a bright future. Hear a lot of great things about him. Right now, I'm thinking the offensive line coach, Jim Mahalchik, offensive line squaring away this year, showing a lot more life in the run game. I think there's been some adjustments there. Pass protection has to come around. That's no question about that. They went into the portal. They got 3 starters from the portal on the offensive line. I think evaluation was good there. He's got a really good reputation as an offensive line coach. I think that's going to bear itself out over the course of time. Also, I think Joe Rossi, over the course of time, is going to show himself to be a good defensive coordinator. I think he's got head coaching capabilities, head coaching potential. Problems on defense in the past game against Boston College, no question about that. And we will talk about that a little bit more as this podcast continues. But that by itself doesn't mean that there's bad coaches out there. I mean, if you followed Michigan State football long enough, you can remember when, Nick Saban got chewed up by Joe Tiller a few times. Mark D'Antonio and Pat Narduzzi, excellent defensive coaches, had trouble with Northwestern and Western Michigan and other teams sticking to their structure and giving up yardage here and there. This is year 2 in the Rossi Smith defense. It's not a Smith defense. He oversees it with Rossi, but we've seen some really great coaches at Michigan State over the years, going back to the great George Perlis. George Perlis was 4-time Super Bowl winning defensive coordinator, Pittsburgh Steelers. I remember covering Michigan State back in the 80s, spring practice. There'd be all kinds of coaches coming through the football building every single spring to study Michigan State's defense. At that time, the stunt 4-3 was considered, it was new. It was something he invented with some tweaks and twists in there. And, he developed that defense with a stunt, with a tilted defensive tackles. That's what he called a stunt. Later on, the twists in the games became known as stunts, but he called that a stunt, tilting the defensive tackles. He did that to stop O.J. Simpson in a playoff game. But anyway, that was considered state-of-the-art stuff back then. And a lot of the Perlis stuff is still being done by the Iowa Hawkeyes these days, and some other teams. But the Norm Parker, Phil Parker, Perlis things, they're not 4-3 anymore. They eventually had to get rid of the outside linebacker as more teams went to 3 and 4 receivers. That became a nickel. But there's still elements of Perlis ball with Iowa, and everyone knows they're a great defensive team year in and year out for decades. But Perlis had situations where teams would pick him apart. The way they played defense, they were soft on the corners back then, different era. Point is, Perlis, very good coach. Had some rough days on defense. Saban, is he a good coach? That one game against Purdue, the dude, the slot receiver, I forget his name, had 17 catches in a game against Michigan State. Narduzzi's good. D'Antonio's good. Rossi's good. This game, for especially the first half, Michigan State was hurt by the passing attack. Ended up, Michigan State in the second half only allowed, 4.3 yards per snap, which would rank number 2 in the Big Ten last year. That's in the second half against Boston College. There were some mishaps in the first half, especially in the red zone when some miscommunications led to touchdowns. Secondly, Boston College's system was quite good. That quarterback, quite good. And Bill O'Brien, quite good. And we'll get into that a little bit more. But yeah, I think Rossi, Mahalchik, Lindgren, offensive coordinator, the things they do differently are interesting, different than a lot of teams across the country. Michigan State under center a lot. Went I formation 11 times in week number 1, 6 times against Boston College. I think Lindgren is interesting if they get the offensive line together and the quarterback gets even more and more settled. You might see Michigan State's offense become problematic in the near future, in the future in general. Maybe not in a fancy bells and whistles, Lane Kiffin, Steve Spurrier type of sense, but more along the lines of maybe what Paul Chryst had at Wisconsin, or even what Jim Harbaugh had at Michigan, where it might have been simple, but it was extremely effective. I think Michigan State is trying to get toward that. Nothing that they're going to be writing books about, I don't think, but I don't close the door on Lindgren becoming a good one in the future, too. Question number 2, Mark Plays from Birmingham, Michigan. He says, what can Michigan State do to generate a pass rush? Generate a pass rush. Excuse me. We other than a few readers, we go commercial free. So if there's times when you need a cough break, we don't do that here. So I might have to turn it off and you have to bear with me. I appreciate your patience. Pass rush. Well, Shalik Calhoun's not walking through that door. Julian Peterson is not walking through that door. Kenny Willekes is not walking through that door. Even Drew Beasley's not walking through that door. So I think there's limitations individual talent-wise. Michigan State looked in the portal, brought in a couple players. In terms of impact defensive pass rushers, that would have cost $1 million. Michigan State wasn't in a position to do that at this point. If Michigan State gets closer to being a college football playoff contender, and they might be one player away from someone they think that can really lift them to that level, I think you will see Michigan State get into those kind of free agency bidding wars. But right now, they're just, I thought they did. I think the early returns are they did a really good job value shopping at wide receiver and offensive line. I know Connor Moore probably cost some money. We hear different things, but I think Michigan State did a good job value shopping, including Analu Lafayette, transfer from Wisconsin, redshirt freshman. He gets on the field on third downs. So does Alicia Moa. So those guys are worth watching here, even this season, but in the future. Lafayette, just a young guy showing some, as Chad Wilt said, some real juice. And we see that a little bit here and there. Jalen Thompson, need more from him. Quindarius Dunnigan, I thought, showed some good things in the opener, not as much in the second game. Not sure what was going on there. Isaac Smith, they got from Texas Tech, I've mentioned before, had 2 really good games at bowl games at Texas Tech, one against Mississippi, one against Arkansas. Loud games, tackle for loss, safety, sack, that type of thing. Was never able to harness that over the long haul at Texas Tech, had some injuries and so forth. He started the first game. I can't remember technically who started this game against Boston College, but they rotated guys around at that rush edge and had trouble getting people home again. But Isaac Smith plays with some size, but not really seen him show up in terms of being a loud pass rusher yet. So individually, it's going to be hard to get the pass rush going. Schematically, they're doing things with blitzes and pressures, but Boston College did such a good job against blitzes. Boston College made quick reads, got rid of it, got the ball out quickly. A lot of times, we'll talk about that with the problems with the pass defense, but it was really effective flooding the short side, 3 receivers, sometimes 4 receivers, and making a quick read, getting 2-on-1s, and you have to, especially if it's zone or off coverage, defense makes a declaration, and they're going the other to the 2-on-1. You cover that guy, we're going here. You cover this guy, we're going there. 2-on-1, boom, boom, boom. Flooding the boundary, as Jonathan Smith said after the game, and they did a good job processing, accurate, and some receivers. There's some good things that they were doing. And Jonathan Smith says that Michigan State, we don't want to be a bend but don't break operation. But if you are giving up yards, and Michigan State tries not to give up the big play, and they are successful with that for the most part. The one guy, Wilkins, got deep once. Devin Cromwell dropped probably too deep on that one. Jonathan Smith mentioned there were times when people dropped too deep. That was probably one of them. Malik Spencer was off the field at that point. Other than that deep one, and we told you about Wilkins in the pre-snap read that he was the fastest player on the team and their deep threat, and he got deep on that one. 56 yards. Other than that, Michigan State did a good job not allowing big plays. Then in the red zone, you can't have miscommunications, which they did twice on 2 of the touchdowns to go up to fall behind 14-7. But like Smith says, we don't want to be bend but don't break all the time, but they don't want to give up big plays. They're successful with that. Red zone communication needs to be better. They mentioned crowd noise was a problem with some of the signs and communication. And that way, that was Boston College exposed some Michigan State weaknesses. Now, it's one thing to not be great in the pass rush, and it's going to be hard to fix. You can bring Lafayette around as you go, but like I said, Shalik Calhoun's not walking through the door. But so there's only so much you can do from a personnel standpoint with a pass rush. But in terms of communication in the back end and things that went wrong in pass defense, those things are correctable, can be corrected, and Boston College exposed some of those weaknesses. So it was a great way for Michigan State to win a game, not have it cost them a victory, win a game of growth in terms of collective. You saw a lot of team-oriented heart on that team. 41 new players and however many it was last year. These guys are still getting to know each other. And in this day and age of college football, the togetherness on a college football team is a fleeting thing. It's like herding cats. It's hard to get it together. But right now, when you're winning 2 games, that showed itself. You lose some games, that could become frayed. I think it did a little bit last year. So they want to build a culture of togetherness. I think we saw some of that in this game. But in the meantime, X's and O's, communication, tightening up the coverage. Sometimes Smith said too deep on their drops, sometimes too shallow on drops, the combination of all that. You can get to the drawing board, really work on it this week against an opponent that's not that daunting, but you can work on yourself this week, Tom Izzo style. And I think they can come out of it better, and we'll see what it looks like going into USC next week. I thought David Santiago showed some juice. I thought he showed some quickness. Had a tackle for loss where he showed some really good pursuit from the backside. Also, let's see, I had one other note on Santiago. Let me see if I can find this. He's number 41, transfer from Air Force. There's a play 3rd and 10 early in the 4th quarter. Michigan State's in press. They're in quarters. They press to the boundary, ends up being quarters. Michigan State came with a 4-man rush. 3rd and 10, early 4th quarter. And Santiago stunted to the inside, showed some quickness, pressed the gap a little, or pressed the pocket a little bit, got up, batted a ball down, 3rd down. Key play by Santiago. So, watching him for Air Force, I thought he was okay. I thought he was a guy. I don't close the door on him becoming a dude. There's guys and there's dudes. Santiago flashed a couple things. Isaac Smith needs to do more. Dunnigan looked good in the first game. Cam Williams comes in. He's a big body guy. Not seeing You're not going to see a lot of him in terms of rushing the passer, I don't think. He can become more valuable when you play run-oriented teams, Iowa, Minnesota, Michigan, some of those teams. But I'm not sure Williams, he's getting quite a few snaps too. He's been the first rush end off the bench a couple times for a couple games. Michigan State tried some blitzes and pressures against Boston College. According to Pro Football Focus, Boston College's protection kept Lonergan, their quarterback, clean 77% of his drop-back attempts. By comparison, Childs was kept clean by pass protection only 60%. 77%, pretty good rate. Michigan State got some pressure on him 11 times, but he completed passes 9 out of 10 on those 11 times, one time scramble keep for a yard or two. So the 11 times they managed to get pressure, he was 9 of 10 on those. So not only did Michigan State have trouble getting pressure on him, he was excellent when he did get a little pressure. When Michigan State blitzed, which I think was 14 of his drop-back pass attempts, Michigan State only brought 14 blitzes because he was doing a good job, kicking it out and getting rid of it. Some of these teams, some of these offensive attacks over the years, you don't want to blitz them because they're very good at making you pay. And Michigan State must have had that sense about Boston College, even though there's really not much film on Lonergan. And last year they had a different style of passing attack, different style of passers. Breeze was kind of that way. At Purdue, I'm going back years and years, but some teams blitz. I'm trying to think. There's someone else it's eluding me, but there have been other cases of excellent passing attacks that you're better off not blitzing them. I know that when Michigan State beat Breeze, it probably cost Drew Brees the Heisman Trophy. That was 2000, the first year after Saban left. Mark D'Antonio was defensive backs coach for Michigan State in 2000. Brad Long, the late great Brad Long, defensive line coach, and his son Will Long is offensive coordinator at Boston College. Side note. Bill Miller was defensive coordinator. They did the study on Breeze, and they looked at how quickly he got the ball out, and they're like, we're never going to get to him, so we're not going to rush him. And they rushed 3 a good portion of that game and locked him up. And Drew Brees was right in the middle of the Heisman hunt, and that was late in the year. Michigan State upset Purdue. It's the year Purdue ended up going to the Rose Bowl, I think. But D'Antonio and those guys cost Brees the Heisman that year by not rushing him. So Michigan State attempted 14 blitzes, and he was 11 of 13 passing on those 14 blitz chances. So there might be other games where Michigan State tries to blitz and pressure more. And they've got a lot of pressure packages in, but this one, not much success. Boston College's system, their quarterback able to process in their system and the accuracy, his ability to make decisions and get rid of it quickly, it didn't match up well. So pass rush remains to be seen when you get to USC and some of these other opponents. Keep an eye on that, but I've got no real answers for you about what Michigan State can do to create pressure. Let's go question number 3. Question 3 dovetails to what we've already talked about. It's from Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina. And he says, Jim, were the problems on defense... Let me check my sound levels, as a matter of fact, just to make sure we're good. Yeah, we're good. Looks like it. He says, were the problems on defense against Boston College more of a pass rush problem or a secondary problem? We've already discussed that a little bit. Secondary, Smith talked about coverage could have been tighter. Drops were not ideal. Pass rush could have been better. It's all of it. The more correctable part is getting tighter and better with the coverages and drops and recognition. That's what has made Iowa so great on defense over the years. They'll play their zone defenses and they turn you over more than anybody, but they're so good with their steps, closing those windows on time and getting their keys and their reads and reacting and closing windows. You think things are open and then they close. And they've been that way for years, the way Phil Parker catches it, coaches it. And I've said for a long time, I mentioned it here before, when Michigan State got ready to play or was preparing to play Minnesota back in 2022, I mentioned in the pre-snap read that Michigan State was going to have a lot of trouble with the Gophers. And subscribers came after me, man. They were really bombarding me with negativity. You're crazy, Comparoni. There's no way. They're going to kill Minnesota. You're overrating Minnesota. Minnesota won that game like 31-7, completely locked up Michigan State. That Minnesota defense, coached by Joe Rossi, coordinator at the time, I compared at the time, similar to Iowa. Schematically, not exactly the same, but in terms of leverage, taking away things and the way they leverage the ball and just being mistake-free with a lot of players that they developed some pretty good players, but it's not like they had a bunch of 4-star recruits on that defense. So I'll be interested to see if Michigan State can improve with their drops and recognition, because they're 14 games into the Jonathan Smith era. Joe Rossi has been with these players for 2 years, some of them, a lot of them for 1 year, some of them for 4 months, like Devin Cromwell, transferred in after spring practice. And I think he was too deep. He dropped too deep. It wasn't a too deep coverage, but he dropped too deep on the long one to Wilkins. So you can work on things in practice and do some 11-on-11s, and then you have 2 scrimmages during the preseason. But there's no teacher like a game. You get those guys out there in a game, you make some mistakes, you make some corrections, you're lucky, you're fortunate, you earned it, you got to win. But to be able to teach off of victory is so important. Second half was really good. End up giving up 27 points in regulation. It's rare to see, and in the pre-snap read, we wrote that Michigan State would make Boston College one-dimensional, and they did. Boston College could not run the ball. It's rare in college football to make someone one-dimensional, and they still hurt you with the pass the way they did. It's a good passing attack. I'll be eager to see what they do with their schedule going forward. In terms of the problems in the red zone, there were miscommunications in the first couple of touchdown passes. Boston College made it 7-7. Josh Eaton, corner, was late identifying a running back coming out of the backfield. They had motioned to some people and emptied it out, and he was over here, and his eyes were not in the right place, and he was late recognizing the running back. Miscommunication, touchdown. I can't remember what down that was. Was that third down? If it's third down, then you're talking about that's a correctable situation that turns 7 points into 3, theoretically. Yeah, that was 3rd and 7. Complete that one to the running back. They took a 14-7 lead on that one. Amarion Smith and Aiden West thought it was man-to-man. Justin Denson was the safety on the other side of the field. He stayed in zone coverage. Jordan Hall, zone coverage. And the wide receiver, Jaden Skeet, crosses. Hall lets him go. He's a linebacker. And Justin Denson lets him go, which makes it look like it should have been zone, probably a 4 deep. But over here, they ran a switch release. And Amarion Smith and Aiden West stayed in man-to-man. And it looked like Hall was looking at Amarion Smith like, where are you supposed to be? And speaking with people this week, indications that Amarion, there was a play or two that he wishes he could have gotten back, and he certainly made up for it with that pass breakup on the 2-point conversion in double overtime. But that one, Amarion Smith, Joe Rossi says he's the smartest player on his defense. He's a very cerebral guy that they say he wants to know why. He wants to know the structure of everything. And on this one, it was a communication situation, I would suspect. You look at the pre-snap before that game, there was some communication going on, but not enough. And that's down there in the student section. Jonathan Smith said, hey, we want the crowd to be loud. But sometimes, he insinuated sometimes that loudness, we got to play through it when we're the home team. We want to affect the offense, but we need to be able to adjust to it also. And I'm not sure that the verbal communication or hand signal communication, the coaches say it's not what it was supposed to be. Also, Michigan State was doing some other things that they ironed out in the second half. Might talk about that later in the year, I don't know. But they got it ironed out in the second half. Like I said, 4.3 yards per play in the second half. 2 field goals in regulation. That one, correctable. The third touchdown, they flooded the short side, and Malik Spencer was matched up on that 6'5" wide receiver, and he just got open. It was a good concept. And Malik didn't get him covered. That was, D'Antonio used to talk about there's 3 kind of errors if you give up a play. Was it structural? Was it a technique error, or was it a physical error? Like, did a guy just get beat? I'm sure Malik Spencer looks at that film and thinks that he could have maybe played that a little differently. I don't know. I've not really gone through it that deeply, but sometimes some guys are going to make plays, especially that guy who's 6'5". These other 2, there were communication breakdowns, which used to be a problem all the time with Mel Tucker and some others. I thought it was pretty good for Michigan State last year for the most part. Disappointed that Michigan State had those situations in this game. Almost cost them a victory. Long term, I don't think that's going to be a problem for a Joe Rossi defense. That's my take on that. Jonathan Smith's quote was, quote, "We've got to be able to communicate whether it's hand signals or making eye contact, just making sure we're on the right call," unquote. I would say also on the play when Amarion Smith and Aiden West were in man-to-man when other people were in zone, that if they had, well, I'm not sure Pretzlaff, linebacker, was on the same page either, because he and Hall were a little too close together, and I'm not sure he would have buzzed out to the flat. I'm having trouble remembering exactly, but I remember I've got it in my notes here that Pretzlaff might not have been on the same page either, so it wasn't just one or two players. It should have been communicated better. Let's see. In terms of pass rush, Michigan State only had one pressure for the whole game. No sacks, one pressure. And they did have a pressure, and I'm not sure who they gave that to. Let me see. And they did have one pressure, which was a coverage pressure. They had a quarterback. Let's see. That's Boston College's stats. Bear with me. Apologize. See, if I could look this up if we went to commercial break. I could look this up and come back on the other side and tease it, but we don't do it that way. Here's Michigan State quarterback hits. One. Oh, Chance Rucker late in the game. That was just before his pass breakup at the end of regulation. But there was one pressure. Didn't go down as a pressure. I wrote it down as a pressure. I'm not sure if PFF did or if the stats did, but Michigan State had a coverage pressure, and it was late in the game. Scoring drive for Boston College. I don't have the down and distance here. I apologize. But got some pressure, and it's up being a freelance shovel to the tight end for 18 yards. It was a coverage pressure. The coverage was good, and the coverage kept it alive for elongated the play, and the quarterback hung in the pocket. Then he had to flush out because Van Sumeren eventually got pressure. Jalen Thompson eventually got pressure. So it flushed the quarterback out, shovel, freelance play, but I'm not sure any player was credited with a pressure on that one. It was a coverage pressure. Amarion Smith on that play had a good drop in cover 4, had the deep shot covered on that one. And that's a little bit of a trick play too, because the guard did a little spin pass protection thing, which was strange. So Jalen Thompson kind of had to ease up as there was like a zone mesh to his side a little bit. He had to check up on it. Then he came on the pass rush, and the left guard spun out and got him. So it looks like a counter run this way, and that kept everybody home. And then I think might have moved the pocket just a little bit, not quite a half roll, but he was looking to go deep. But anyway, Amarion Smith, good coverage on that one. Just going off memory of what it was, but I'd never seen a pass protection quite like that. Sometimes you'll see a guard peel back on the power pass, as Peyton Manning used to call it, but that was just a little bit different. Anyway, second half, Boston College had 143 yards of offense, not counting overtime. That's in 34 plays. That's 4.2 yards per play. Like I said earlier, that's a rate which would rank number 2 in the Big Ten last year, 4.2 yards per play. That's what Michigan State held Boston College to in the second half. Boston College was 12 of 19 for 133 yards in the second half. 12 of 19, 133 in the second half. That would be a rate of, 266 for a game, which is not great, but not bad. Second half, Michigan State was good on defense. That's what Michigan State would be happy to allow to a Boston College scheme that was good with a good quarterback and some pretty good receivers. So Michigan State did well to contain them in the third and fourth quarter. And in the meantime, Michigan State held Boston College to 10 yards on 9 rush attempts in the second half. 10 yards, 9 rush attempts, completely shut down the run. Made them one-dimensional, but still couldn't get a pass rush, which is kind of rare. So good scheme by Boston College, good brain work for the quarterback, getting rid of it, going through his progressions quickly and accurate. And the receivers were capable. They were getting open on some of those little possession routes. After the game, Jonathan Smith said needed to affect the quarterback more. Absolutely. Needed to play tighter coverage. So it's both. And I do think the coverage thing can tighten up to an extent. So Michigan State tried a few blitzes. There was one blitz, on the 56-yarder to V.J. Wilkins. Michigan State blitzed Ade Willie and Jordan Hall. Neither one of them defeated their blocker to get home. Isaac Smith dropped into coverage as part of that. And Devin Cromwell, deep drop, maybe too deep. Amarion Smith came up kind of in the hook area. I think it must have been cover 3. And he turned and ran with Wilkins, but Wilkins can really fly. And he got loose on that one. Question number 4, Chris from South Lyon, Michigan. He says, what does Childs need to do, Aiden Childs need to do to go from good to very good? Is it going through his progressions quicker? Thanks for being a subscriber, Chris. I like how he's using some of my terminology. You can go from good to quite good to very good. I'd say Smith went from, Aiden Childs went from pretty good to good in this game. At times, quite good. So to get to very good, and we had a story about that in SpartanMag.com this morning about quarterbacks coach John Boyer talking about that, Jonathan Smith talking about that. They're going to continue to push the envelope. They want more from him. They think he can do better and better. And that's what you expect at the college level, right? He's not a finished product by any means. Made a lot of progress in this game. But yeah, making quicker reads. Did a really good job staying away from the turnover. Turnovers were a problem for him last year. There's a big point of emphasis coming into this season. He's been clean in that department, and clean in avoiding turnovers to the point where maybe holding the ball too long for sacks, or maybe getting rid of it when maybe he could have stayed in a little longer to go through reads. So there's more that can be done there, but he's making progress. And if he ever gets really good at that stuff, he's really going to be a weapon. Smith mentioned that he checked it down to Tullis effectively once or twice. And then in the same token, Smith said, we'd like to see him do that more often, especially if it's, I guess it doesn't matter if it's third down or what down it is. If it's a situation where you can see right away that these things are not going to come open and you've got a coverage situation, a pressure situation, go to your check down right now. That's what it sounded like. He can get to that quicker. Not on every play, but on some plays. So they're going to be studying that and get better and better and tighten those screws. It's a learning situation. He's been a starter for 14 games. He's turning 20 Friday, I think. So I'd like to see him become a little more accurate when throwing on the run, because he can elongate plays. His feet get him out of trouble. And a lot of times he's on the move and it's not accurate. Easy for me to say up in the press box drinking hot chocolate and getting fat. But for Childs to become even better and better and better, he can become even more problematic for defenses if his ability to throw on the run improves. But quicker with his progressions. We'll talk about the sacks here in a minute. Check downs to running backs and using those things and just getting the information and making decisions quicker. A lot of that stuff over my head, but you see it when it works and you see the results sometimes when it doesn't. When we've got a remote control and we're watching from 400 feet away, it's easy for us when we're not down on the field at field level getting hit by 300-pound people. Question 5, Sola from Westland, Michigan says, what are your thoughts on the coaches constantly rotating players on the offensive line? It's strange to me that they would switch guys from left to the right side and vice versa. I don't see how the reps can be valuable if you're switching from one side to the other. Curious to hear your thoughts. That's from Sola in Westland. Good question. We've seen that in the D'Antonio era where they tried to play a lot of offensive linemen if they had the depth and the capability to do it. But to your point, you didn't see people switching from left to right a whole lot. That's something new in terms of teams that I've covered. They're trying to manufacture some functional depth there. There's not really a game-ready left tackle. The second string left, there's Stanton Ramil. Technically, the second string left tackle is Rustin Young. I don't think Rustin Young is ready yet, redshirt freshman. So if there's an emergency and Ramil can't play, who do you put at left tackle? I don't know if Lepo's quite there, so they've been using Connor Moore over there. Connor Moore played left tackle at Montana State. Came to Michigan State, spent the entire spring at right tackle, getting acclimated to that. And then in this game, I guess both games played a little bit on the left side. And I asked him this week after practice if there was a little bit of rust going over to the left side. And he said, yeah, there was a little bit, even though he played left tackle at Montana State. Having spent the entire offseason in spring practice at right tackle, there was a little bit of rust. I don't know if he spent the entire offseason not doing left tackle, but certainly this he didn't do it in the spring. Said there was some rust. I think you saw it in the Western Michigan game a little bit. A little better in some regards in this left tackle this game. But if something happened to Ramil, you want to manufacture more depth at the left tackle position. I can understand Moore doing it, especially since he's done it in the past. In terms of guards, you've seen that over the years with teams, right guard, left guard. You see a lot of that, maybe not within the course of one game, but I don't think that's completely unorthodox. But is it disruptive? In that first game against Western, it might have been a little bit. Second game, I thought it was interesting that Michigan State began the second half with second string offensive linemen. Brocious at left guard, Vincic at right guard, Lepo at right tackle. Began the second half with that. That was interesting. Late in the game, Vincic was right guard. End of regulation. And Vincic is a guy that I liked at Oregon State last year coming into the season. And I mean, we saw Brocious start 3 games last year. We saw Christian Phillips start 1 game, and they're kind of still young players, still getting to know them a little bit, what they were. Both were injured. But I was like, Vincic did more as a backup at Oregon State than those guys did. I knew more about Vincic coming in, and I liked him. I thought he was quite good, going to be quite good. And sustained an injury late in camp, so he was not available in the first game. I wouldn't be shocked if Vincic started this game against Youngstown State. I think Vincic, and then it's great that you've got some competition there. Brocious, Phillips, Vincic, and Carter, the transfer from Western Carolina, has been a surprise to me. I watched him last year against NC State and somebody else, and I was like, man, he's dinged up, and I wasn't sure how reliable he would be. And we didn't get a sense that he was really competing for a starting job in the spring or in preseason practice. Boom, he started both games. Right guard, first game, left guard, second game. And I thought he was excellent in that opener against Western Michigan. So over the course of time, if it gets ironed out, I think that depth could really be a plus. Michigan State in this game averaged 4.3 yards per carry, 183 yards rushing. They gained 183 yards rushing. They lost 34 on sacks for a net of 149. But 183 gains, that's excellent. That's productive. And I think that could get better. Talk about a couple of holding calls. One on Ramil, one on Moore, both at left tackle, both on inside zones, both against number 52, Marable. Both times, 52 on placed, inside zone to the left. Marble kept his head to the outside there. Michigan State didn't quite get him controlled. He did a good job fending them off and keeping his outside shoulder open, and eventually they held. 52, I was like, I don't even remember 52. When I was doing my pre-snap read, I went back and looked. The guy only played 14 snaps against Fordham. Transferred this year from Wake Forest. Didn't do much at Wake Forest last year. 6'2", 305. This is what happens early in the season. I didn't even mention him in the pre-snap read. 6'2", 305. He beat Connor Moore on one play, beat Ramil on one play. He beat Ramil on the one, and Ramil holds. Ends up being touchdown. Elijah Tautalliver, 7-yard touchdown, fourth quarter. Holding call, taken off the board. 52 in there making an impact. He only played 20 snaps against Michigan State. Like I said, played 14 against Fordham. Was not on my radar. I said that Boston College was weak in that defensive line, especially their depth. I didn't see that guy coming. I missed the memo on that one. But early in the season, there wasn't much film on him. He made an impact, drew 2 holding penalties. So, 4 sacks Michigan State gave up. All 4 in the fourth quarter. First one, let's categorize these. First one was first down and 20. It was 1 play after that holding penalty on Connor Moore. This is 2 plays after Krishan McCray made that great one-handed catch. By the way, did you notice that one-handed catch was at the exact same place where Charles Woodson made that one-handed interception in 1997? I'm sorry if that's a sore subject for some people, but it's a really good play by a really good player. Anyway, Krishan McCray, big-time catch there. McCray told us that they work on one-handed catches like that in practice. I've not seen that, but certainly came to the forefront on that one. So after the holding penalty, now it's 1st and 20 at Michigan State's own 37-yard line. 6-man rush, 3-man route. They're all downfield routes. So Childs doesn't have a lot of time. It's a 6-man rush. Running back, tight end stays in late. Then they're peeling out late. So it's 1st and 20, and he takes a sack. Tight end, Parachek was in there. I can't remember how many snaps Parachek played. Coming back, he missed most of fall camp. He's had, some injury situations through his career. He's doing what he can. Excuse me. But on that one, he failed to pick up or identify the blitzer. He played 2 snaps. Parachek played 2 snaps. And on this one, he did not recognize the blitzing nickel. Nickel gets in for a sack. That's early fourth quarter. Not on Childs necessarily. It's 1st and 20. He's not. That's his blind side. You got to trust that your tight end's got that guy. He's trying to make reads downfield. Running backs, tight ends are peeling out late. And before they can peel out late, it's a sack. Not on the offensive line. That's on the tight end. Second sack, 3rd and goal, the 9-yard line, 4 minutes to play, 4:47. They blitz 6. They're starting to get success now blitzing and bringing more than the standard 4, coming with 6. Mekhi Frazier, running back, did not pick up the inside blitzer, sack on 3rd and goal, field goal. Not the fault of the offensive line. 3rd sack. This one I thought was a little bit more on Childs. Last drive of regulation play. 50 seconds to go in the game, 1st and 10, 41-yard line. And Michigan State, by the way, I mean, there is such a blur of activity late in that game. You go back and watch it again, I forget that Boston College goes down, kicks field goal, ties it up. Michigan State gets the ball back, minute 16 left. First play, Childs scramble, gain of like 17, 18 yards, real nice run. Second play, corner route to the outside, Omari Kelly, gain of about 20. So 2 plays, Michigan State's at their 41-yard line, 50 seconds to go, 2 timeouts. Michigan State looks like they're driving to win this game. Those 2 opening plays to begin that drive, the answer drive, if you're Boston College, you're like, man, we can't stop these guys. We're going to lose this game. But it all ended on a sack. 1st and 10, 41-yard line. You got 2 timeouts, sack. 3-by-1 formation, 5-man rush, off man-to-man to the inside. Look like more press coverage to the outside. So it's off man-to-man to the inside. Come with a 5-man rush, so you got to be quick. Look to me, again, I'm up there drinking coffee and eating donuts, fat, out of shape, never been any kind of athlete. I'm like, well, dude, the running back was open. Again, I always want to put that disclaimer in there because these guys, Aiden Childs and these football players are better at football than I will ever be at anything. So my criticism comes with that, just that disclaimer. I'm just trying to provide information for the fans on what was going right, what's going wrong, where is their potential, where are their problems, what needed to be fixed. So I'm talking about things that when the players look at film, things that they thought they could have done better. On this one, in my opinion, I've not heard this from the coaches and anyone else, seemed like Childs on 1st and 10 with 2 timeouts, blitz is coming, had a check down earlier to Frazier on the short side flat. He looked over there. Maybe the linemen were kind of in his path because he looked over there and didn't throw it. And after the game, Jonathan Smith was talking about he had a couple good check downs to Tullis and some others. Had some more they could have gone to. I suspect that was one of the plays. Would have liked to have gone ahead and fired that one. But it maybe didn't have the window, didn't have the avenue. On the other side, the 3 receiver side, had a free release. Like I said, it was off coverage to the inside, tight coverage to the outside. So on inside, you got a free release. Had Velling on a little short out. Could have dumped it down right there for a 5 or 6 yard gain. Was looking for more of a chunk, but 50 seconds left with 2 timeouts. You can take a little out route right there if you're operating. And Smith said the things that they would like to have done better in that game. Among them was the 2-minute offense. And I think that play right there, that decision right there could have been better because it ends up taking a sack. And he kind of makes a decision to run. That's what it was. He looks over here and then he decides to run because Childs had success running the ball, of course. Some big plays with his feet. So you can understand. And plus conditioning comes into this. I mean, this guy's been taking some hits. He's been playing for 4 quarters. Adrenaline's up. He's having a good game. And he just wants to shoulder the team and carry them to a victory. This avenue's not quite there. He's going to pull and run because he just had a successful run 2 plays ago. Pulls, runs, tackle for a 1-yard loss. Technically, it's a sack, but he had Velling over here on a free release. So I'm thinking maybe they would want him to read the whole field quicker there. I don't know. With a blitz, maybe they don't want him reading both sides of the field. So then I'm speaking out of turn by even thinking that. But they do think 2-minute drill could have been better, I suspect, on this play. But no one on the offensive line was beaten on this play. It was a decision. It was a blitz. Decides to tuck and run. There was a receiver open. So kind of on Childs, I would think. 4th sack, very next play. Stanton, this is the one time offensive lineman was beaten. Stanton Ramil beaten to the outside by Hutchins. Hutchins, I thought was kind of an okay pass rusher. He looked good on this one. Quick takeoff, rip move, and really ran the hoop and turned the corner at the end of that thing. For it to be the last minute of regulation for that defensive lineman to have that much of an athletic play and turn the corner. Good on him, Hutchins, good pass rush there. I mentioned that he was just a guy, not a dude in the pre-snap read. He looked like a dude on that play. And Stanton Ramil, I thought had a real good, clean game for most of the game. Second half, I'm wondering, I don't want to say conditioning's a situation, but he needs to find a little bit more in the fourth quarter. If you can allow him to sit a little bit more, and that gets back to your question about, is Michigan State doing a disservice to themselves by rotating so much? I don't know. I mean, if you can get Lepo in there, move more over there, then you sit more, and then you got Ramil back out there over the course of time, that can help. But Ramil is a young player, had injuries early in his career. Last year was thrust into a starting situation, kind of survived it. They think that he's got real high ceiling of potential. I do too. Looks good in some areas, but then he'll have a play like that. That was a third down. That was on him. Sack, off the field, punt, down to the 1 yard line. They run on the clock going to overtime. So that 2-minute drill stalled. Those 2 sacks. One I thought was on Childs. One, Ramil got beat. The only time in the whole game that an offensive lineman got beat for a sack, or for a quarterback hit or a pressure. Now there were, it happened late in the game, so they all kind of compounded. Boston College was credited with 2 quarterback hits in addition to the 4 sacks. One was Hutchins and one was linebacker Crouch. I'd have to go back and look and see what those were. I'm not sure what those were, but I didn't chart those and whose fault those were. That end of regulation, I talked about the 17-yard scramble. Man-to-man, eluded the middle linebacker spy. That was the first play of the 2-minute drill at the end of regulation. I thought he showed some guttiness. Childs did to get that drive going, so credit him on that. Let's see if I can go through these a little quicker. I probably won't be able to. Where are we at right now? We are 46 minutes in. Jim, this is a question from, I don't know who it was, from Ravenna, Michigan. I didn't write down his name. I apologize. He says, Jim, any progress update on the NIL, name, image, and likeness organization at Michigan State? Well, I know they've had some meetings with large donors in different places in the country, but in terms of for the rank and file fan, I've not seen, they're talking about places to donate, but I've not seen a lot of promotions on that lately. I think the athletic department is of the opinion that the $20.5 million cap that you're allowed to pay student athletes is going to handle it. In terms of raising anything above the $20.5 million and doing it within the legal clearinghouse, I think Michigan State's open to that, but I think other programs are going to keep getting Billy Bob oil to pay more and more above the $20.5 million. I'm sure Ohio State's going to want to do that. Michigan's going to want to do that. Texas A&M, people of that ilk. So, I'm not really sure. I've not heard a lot about that in terms of NIL. I know Michigan State has distanced itself from the exterior collectives. Spartan Dogs for Life. This is Sparta. They've distanced themselves from that. Those are going away. They've basically said don't need that at this point. So we'll see how it turns out. I know Jay Batt was in that group that put together. Was it the focus group or whatever it was that put together the idea for the clearinghouse? So he's going to be. Jay can tell me if I'm wrong about this, but he was part of the group that helped construct the framework of this going forward. So, Michigan State's going to operate within that framework. We'll see if other schools do, if they get caught. Jay Batt said a few weeks ago that there are some schools, some situations, some NIL deals that have been flagged and not allowed. I'm not aware of any of those. For instance, Bryce Underwood with the reported $10 million deal. What if the clearinghouse flagged that and said it's not really market value work? I don't think that would hold up in court. I think if you try to tell Underwood that he can't receive that $10 million, it'd be in court real quick and he would win. So you can talk about the 20.5 cap, and that's a steep cap. A lot of programs with the TV money that'll go in there, and it goes back to the players. Above and beyond that, there's going to be programs, I think, that will still operate above that 20.5 million with collectives that continue to exist. And no, I don't think Michigan State has one. I think they're going to try to raise money at every angle to help fill in that 20.5 million. And if there's excesses, they can probably deal with that and utilize that later. But in terms of aggressive NILs, not seeing that right now. Collectives, not using collectives. Raising money in other ways. They just hired Jared Kozin as Deputy Athletic Director, Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer. And if I'm wrong about that, I see J-Bat in the press box a lot and his people, and they can tell me if I'm wrong or they can educate me on these things. I get questions about things like this, and I don't really know all the answers. But they just hired Jared Kozin, Deputy Athletic Director, Chief Revenue and Marketing Officer. On the press release, it says he'll be identifying new revenue streams and finding opportunities to build predictable revenue growth. Nothing in the press release said anything about Jared being involved with name, image, likeness, and like I said, they're distancing themselves from third-party collectives. So trying to find revenue streams, that's a big one. Revenue streams. We've talked about that in the past. Can Michigan State have concerts like some programs are doing around the country with their facilities? There's companies out there that handle concerts and hand over checks to athletic departments for $3, $4, $5, $6 million. So will they be looking at those type of revenue streams? I don't know. So no real strategic plan about what they want to do with Jared Kozin, but that's worth watching. That would go all into those coffers. A lot of this, it's hard to get a handle on it, but good question. I'll keep my ear to the ground and find out what else is going on. Ernie in Colorado has a question. Through 2 games, he says, which players seem to have taken the biggest leaps since last year? What are some programs? Okay, he also asks, what are some programs, destinations that you'd like to see Michigan State have a home and home with? Just curious if you have any bucket list stadiums to cover a game. I'd like to go to an SEC stadium, Tennessee, Kentucky. Some of these others, it's hard to schedule South Carolina because they've got that non-conference game with Clemson. It's hard to schedule. I guess Kentucky has a non-conference game with Louisville, so it's probably hard to schedule with them. Tennessee is kind of open for home and homes with various programs. That would be an interesting one. You're trying to schedule wins, though. So, some of these like Arizona, Boston College might be a little more winnable. I'm not sure if there's much sizzle there for season ticket holders, but I suspect the coaches, I don't think they're in a hurry to schedule Notre Dame. They'd love to schedule Notre Dame as like an institution. Michigan State would. D'Antonio was up for it, but a lot of coaches, especially since Notre Dame's pretty strong right now, Boston College is kind of that sweet spot. The TV ratings, you're on NBC. They give you national television. The ratings were like only 1.9 million, still not bad. And there's still people there seeing you if they're channel surfing a little bit. But you're getting a win. Boston College has been tougher than they thought. Losing out there last year, could have lost this one this year. Boston College showed up and they were tough. Illinois went down, played at home and home with Duke. I don't see much out of that. Do you really want to tangle with Texas and Georgia? I don't know. Is Alabama going to be what they used to be in the future? I don't know. I don't think so at all. I think they might be the new Nebraska. Maybe not that bad, but they've got some challenges coming up. Back in the Perlis days, Michigan State played Florida State home and home. Miami began with Muddy Waters, and that series ended against George Perlis. They had a home and home with Miami. COVID canceled one of them. That was interesting. So Miami's interesting, right? I guess Hollis probably scheduled that one. Hollis looked to go south a little bit more. So bucket list, there's places I'd like to go watch a game. SEC stadiums, I've not been to those. But would you look at Colorado? That'd be interesting, I guess, especially if Deion Sanders is still there. But, these things are scheduled so many years out, he probably won't be there by the time the game is played. So strategically, Tennessee would be interesting. A couple of historically strong programs that I don't remember if they've ever played. And that stadium is legendary down there. And they usually have openings on their dance card. I'm sure that a lot of those openings have been filled in the near future. But Tennessee would be one. Who do they have this year? There's so this year Tennessee played Syracuse, right? They had a home and home with Syracuse. Not a lot of sizzle there. A couple of wins for Tennessee. looking up their football schedule for the future. Not that I'm just curious who they've signed up with. 2026, Georgia Tech. So Tennessee's playing Georgia Tech for a home and home in 26 and 27. They're playing Western Michigan in 27, by the way. 28, they play West Virginia in Charlotte, North Carolina, a neutral. And then they've got a home and home with Washington in 29 and 30. So I think Tennessee is a team that comes open. They're not a team that has a non-conference rival. And I think Tennessee would be an interesting one for the future. And you asked, through 2 games, which players seem to have taken the biggest leaps from last year? From last year? Well, you got to remember on the offense, they got 3 transfers starting on the offensive line and 2 starters at wide receiver. That only leaves 6 positions at which you might have returning players having a big impact. Theoretically, I mean, I know that Phillips and Brocious are kind of starters, non-starters. Anyway, players, on defense, Ade Willie at nickel has made a big leap. I think he's gone from a guy that was having trouble not being a liability as a corner, moved to nickel, has got some physicality there, he's playing with some veteran moxie. And it's a little bit sad for him because he's in his 4th year, played a little bit as a true freshman, like 16 snaps in 5 games, and blew a year of eligibility back in 2021 or whenever that was, 2022. Yeah, 2022. Last year got on the field, emergency purposes, corner, struggled. Talking to him this week, it was his idea to look at nickel. He moved to nickel, did well. Coaches were impressed with him, pleasantly surprised. Went into the summer expecting him to be the starter. He's been a starter, had a nice game against Western. Ade Willie in year 4. And I talked to him about that it's odd and unfortunate that in this day and age, there's so many players. I mean, good for them that they're playing 6 seasons, 7 seasons, getting that COVID year, COVID waivers, extra year. Some guys playing 6, a lot of guys playing 6 seasons. And here's Ade Willie coming in the after COVID in 2022, barely gets on the field in 2022, 4 games, 4 years of eligibility, done. He's a senior, whereas some of these other guys have been around for 6 or 7 years. So he got caught in the wrong timing in that whole situation. But Ade Willie's a senior. He's improved. Ben Roberts now starting a defensive tackle. You're seeing him early in games, getting some movement on guys, making some plays. Ben Roberts, not a surprise, has improved. Jordan Hall, linebacker, we heard that in the spring, heard that in offseason. Playing quicker, playing with more and more smarts. Jordan Hall's improved. Had a big game against Western Michigan. Had a big game in this one, forcing the fumble, 15 tackles, playing through some pain. Alex Van Sumeren has gone from a guy to a semi-dude. Jonathan Smith calls him Steady Eddie. He's in there. He's not getting, he took on a double team early in that game and was okay with it, doing a little better job disengaging and making plays upfield. Van Sumeren's coming along as you'd expect a veteran. Get into his man strength more and more. Quindarius Dunnigan, I thought, looked very improved in the first game. Didn't see him as much in this game. Mekhi Frazier looks like a bona fide Big Ten running back. Didn't see that from him last year. Was a big question coming into the season. He's been solid. Michael Masunas, tight end. He's a hoss and blocker, reliable receiver, running his routes, doing his thing. Masunas is coming. Now, last year he only played a couple games and was lost for the year, so he probably would have been this good last year, or a semblance of this. Now, so who needs to become better as the season goes along? Stanton Ramil at left tackle. Christian Phillips inside, whether it's Phillips or Brocious. But I think Vintage is going to be in there. Carter, the other one. So maybe Phillips and Brocious become second stringers behind Carter and Vintage. And if that's the way it is, it's competition, but you got some depth there. Jalen Thompson also needs to continue to make a step at defensive end. We'll see. Question 8 from Old Man Wisdom from Temperance, Michigan. He says, why has there been a lack of utilization of the slot receiver? Can we expect this to continue due to wanting to get Jay Coyne on the field at fullback? Well, Coyne played 11 snaps I formation in the first game, 6 snaps of I formation in this game, and so not as much in this game. Krishan McCray was on the field for 36 snaps. 23 were pass plays. Rodney Bullard only 7 snaps, 3 pass plays. I think Bullard's got more to give. Heard a lot about his explosiveness during preseason camp. Haven't seen it yet. McCray was a little bit banged up in preseason camp, but he's better now. So, all right, so Michigan State throws the ball 29 times. in this game. 16 of the 29 pass attempts were targeted to Nick Marsh and Omari Kelly. I think we would agree that Marsh and Kelly are pretty good. So 16 of the 29 go to those guys. That leaves 13 other targets. Who do you want those 13 targets to go to? McCray had 4 targets out of the slot. So that gives you, 9 more? 8 of those targets went to tight ends and running backs. A lot of times we always hear, why don't they throw it to the running backs more? Why don't they throw it to the tight ends more? Well, they threw it 8 times to those positions. 3 to Masunas, 1 to Tullis, 1 to Savory, 1 to Coyne, 1 to Frazier, 1 to Velling. I go through this every week. 29 passes. Do you want to pass more than 29? Maybe not, because they ran the ball pretty good. So who among those players do you want to see get the ball less if you want to give the ball more to McCray or Bullard? Do you want to throw less to Marsh? Want to throw less to the tight ends? So Bullard gets on there and was targeted once, and they went to him. And they went to him for a kill shot. It was 8 minutes to go in the game. Game's tied 24-24. They got Bullard on the field. And Bullard's not a slot for that. He's not a slot receiver on that one. He's a split end. And Marsh is a flanker off the line of scrimmage over here. So I suspect some of that was maybe to get them communicating a little bit about who's what. Here's number 6 over here. And they ran Bullard on an out and up. They're trying to sneak that speed by him. That was like a secretive talent. Now's the time. 1st and 10, 35-yard line, 8 minutes to go in the game. We're getting 7 points right now. Let's run that Bullard play out up. And you might remember that the corner for Boston College held and interfered, and there was no flag down at the 5-yard line. Good play by the Boston College guy, probably prevented a touchdown. Good play call, good play design, and they went to a slot receiver there, but as a split end, Bullard, and coulda, shoulda, woulda been a big game-changing play with 8 minutes to go. So there are things in the playbook. They've got some diversified skill and talent, and it's hard to get. You can't. The guys I just mentioned, there's 8 or 9 of them. You can't target all of them 10 times. You can't throw the ball 90 times. So invariably in some games, there's going to be some players, whether it be tight ends, running backs, or whoever, that might not get targeted as much as you want. And Marsh at halftime was like, target me more. Question 9, Tim from Ypsilanti, Michigan says, what do you think it will take to get 4 quarters of football that look like the last half against Boston College? First of all, good for you to identify that Michigan State played well in the second half. Came out strong. Opening drive, second half, and 2-minute drill at the end of the game. Didn't finish, but Michigan State did some good things, especially on defense in that one. They had some stoppages too, though. What were the stoppages? That Western Michigan game we looked at the second half because Michigan State, through last year, struggled in the second half against everybody except Prairie View. First drive of the second half, Michigan State comes out, drives, touchdown. Got to a 3rd and 6. Omari Kelly with that back shoulder. Big time play from Childs. Had to have it. Opening drive down by 7 points after taking a knee to end the first half. Badly needed that opening drive to count. 3rd and 6, getting in a hole. Well covered. Back shoulder on a little underthrown thing. Good connection between Childs and Kelly there. 2 guys that have only been together since the spring. Huge play. Might have been the turning point of the game. Next play, touchdown. Aiden Childs, I formation. And making them think run. But if Michigan State's I formation, yeah, you gotta defend the run. But I formation, Michigan State also will go deep. So that, what do you do with your safeties? Because this is on film. This is what Michigan State does. I formation. Are they running it or are they going deep? It's they want to put that in your head. Effectively did it on that one. Smith loved the trajectory of that pass. Had him well covered for a minute, but at the end of that route, Smith, Nick Marsh, maybe a little push off, but that corner kind of had him covered. What did that corner do? Kind of had him covered. Looked back for the ball. And when he looked back for the ball, that's when the separation happened. A lot of fans are like, why aren't we looking back for the ball on coverage? Harlan Barnett used to teach it that don't look back until you're in phase. And there's a knack and I don't know. I've never tried to cover Nick Marsh. But that was a case in which the corner looks back for the ball and it costs him a touchdown. Would he have been better off waiting and just waiting for the hands? You kind of want to identify the ball at some point, but when do you look back? When do you do it? I don't know. There's an art to that, and I'm not an artist, so I don't know. Touchdown, first drive on those 2 plays. Second drive, 50-yard field goal to tie it up at 24-24. So scored on the opening 2 drives. 3rd and 8. 3-by-1. They blitz. Childs. Balance. Spin. Keeper. Gain of 19. Very important run right there in his career. Get down there and kick a field goal. Holding on inside zone. Is that Ramil on that one also? Did he hold twice? Cover 6, 3rd and 2nd and 20 scramble. Got rid of it, 3rd and 20. Press too deep. Marsh post. Incomplete. Kicked a field goal, 50-yarder. I'll just go back and look at that one. I forget it. 4th quarter. Had the holding on Connor Moore. 1st and 20. Then corner blitz. Or is that the nickel blitz? Sack. End up punting. Next time they had the ball, drove for the field goal to tie it up with 4 minutes to go. Only had the ball 4 times in the second half, and then 1 at the end of the half. Second half was pretty good for Michigan State. So you're asking, what do they have to do to get 4 quarters of football like that? That defense has to get on the same page. If that's not fixed, then they're just going to be treading water all season, barely. So that's got to get fixed. Individual pass rush has to come around. Is it LaFele? Is it Santiago? I don't close the doors on those guys becoming solid with that. Childs has to be a little more settled, quicker with his checkdowns, more and more settled with his reads. And Stanton Ramil needs to be good in the 4th quarter long term. Those are the things to get Michigan State to play 4 quarters of football like they did in the second half against Boston College. All right, Tino in Long Beach says, do you think the pass rush and secondary are legitimate concerns? I think we can outscore most opponents, but man, I'm a little concerned defensively. Good question. We've been talking about that the whole show. The answer is we learn as we go. I want to see what the secondary looks like when Spencer is with Martinez. I think we'll see that against USC. And maybe we'll see Martinez a little bit this weekend. They got to knock some rust off. They're still competing to find out who their top corners are. Josh Eaton, heard a lot of great things about him in the spring and preseason. I think he's just been kind of okay. I went back and watched him at Texas State last year. I thought he was just kind of okay. Aiden West gets in there against Western, played pretty well. This game, Eaton is involved in that mistake on that first touchdown. West goes in there. West makes a mistake. Aiden West makes a mistake, allowing the ball to get outside after the catch. I can't remember if it was a run. It must have been a little short catch. And he goes inside, loses leverage. He had his help over here. He should have leveraged it outside into his help. Instead, he goes in here, gets out for about 20. They yank him off the field, didn't play again. Chance Rucker goes in there. I think Chance Rucker played the rest of the game. They like Chance Rucker. Chance Rucker played in 2023, the nightmare season. He came in out of, because of injuries, came in out of necessity and started like 8 or 9 games that year as a true freshman. And like I've said, I don't remember Chance Rucker ever looking like a true freshman that year, to his credit. The next year starts in the opener, injury, loss for the season. Comes back, and I expected him to be the starter in the spring, but as preseason camp was going on, Eaton had done well, and Malcolm Bell starts coming out of nowhere to play good football, the transfer from UConn, native of Montreal. Big, tall, long guy. Nick Marsh says, when Marsh was asked which corner do you have the most trouble with, he said 14, Malcolm Bell, and he's played pretty well, which surprises me because I went back and watched him for UConn against somebody. He came off the bench, did not play well. Next game, started due to injury. Syracuse, first play of the game, audible, went deep on him, 60 yards. And then he came out and I was like, he's probably a depth guy. He's coming out and starting and looking pretty good. I'm astonished by that, but he's lengthy, and they wanted some length at corner. They worked with him, and how much of that is, Blue Adams. Got to give him some credit. And the people doing the portal evaluation. We'll see what Malcolm Bell becomes as the season goes along, but I didn't expect him to play. You don't see Malcolm Bell end up on the stat sheet or in the view very often because they're not going to his side. If the ball's not coming to him, that's a good sign. Western Michigan dropped a deep one, like on a little fade along the sideline, kind of underthrew him, coming back to the ball. Had him covered, but then comes back to the ball. Gave up that one play, not really bad coverage or anything. Maybe Adams, he said he wanted interceptions on all those, but he wants everything, right? But Malcolm Bell, sometimes with these Canadian guys, they develop a little later. They're older. How much coaching did they get coming out of Canada? Was it UConn? Now it's his last year of college football. It's an option. It's his contract year. He's playing pretty well. So I think Malcolm Bell is safe. Question is Eaton, Rucker, West. They like West. He's got a lot of talent, great future. Made a freshman mistake there. Rucker gets in there, finishes the job. Now, Rucker almost had pass interference on Boston College's last drive of regulation. Second down, or was it third down? Those two plays back-to-back. On the next one, he came in and got pressure on the quarterback. Coming out of he was in the cloud, he was in the flat zone. Made a read, came to the quarterback, pressure late. Before that, arrived early. And they're lucky they didn't get pass interference there. It was early contact. If they call pass interference there and it's 1st and 10 at the 10-yard line with a 1:16 to go in the game, Michigan State's chances of winning that game would have gone down drastically if they'd thrown that flag. And it should have been a flag, honestly. I can't remember if that was second down or third down. Anyway, so Rucker played a good game, I thought, but almost had a fatal mistake on that one. Aggressive mistake. So I'll be curious to see at the corner position how that shakes out. You're going to be rotating those guys. But Rucker can play. West, high ceiling of potential, freshman a mistake. Eaton, need to see more from him. So that's going to be interesting as that competition continues to develop. Like I said before, there's no teacher like a game. So Denson got on the field. Cromwell got on the field at safety. Even Eaton. I mean, these guys they're new to the Rossi system still. So tighten the screws there. There's potential there. Question 11, Josh from Plymouth Canton. He says, easy to say Boston College was not a pushover team by any means. This is a long question, but it's a thoughtful one, so I'm going to read the whole thing. Good coach for Boston College, good quarterback, and pretty decent weapons. Will probably be an upper half, maybe even top 25% ACC team this year. That's from Josh from Plymouth Canton. I don't disagree with that. I'm not making that prediction. I'll be intrigued to see what happens because the offense is for real. I didn't think they had a lot of depth at the line of scrimmage, but they ended up being better at the line of scrimmage than I thought. ACC is like the Big 12. It's a big mosh pit of parity, so we'll see what happens there. I've not looked at their schedule. I don't think they get any Southern teams at home in cold weather part of the season, which would help Boston College. But anyway, Josh says, my question is, do you believe Joe Rossi's defensive system is more based around the Big Ten narrative? Stop the run, force them to beat you in the air, since the Big Ten is more or less pass, more run conference. I don't necessarily agree with that. I'd have to look at it, all things considered. Anyway, he says, because then I'm honestly going to feel a lot better about our upcoming schedule. I just don't see a ton of standout quarterbacks or receivers in front of us that can single-handedly beat you in the air. Maybe USC, I guess, but they haven't really been punched in the face yet. That's the question. So what is the question? It's easy to say the BC was going to probably be in whatever. My question, do you believe Rossi's defensive system is more based around the Big Ten narrative? Okay, yeah, that's the main question. Yeah, I think he wants to not give up big plays and stop the run. And that's the way Narduzzi was. Narduzzi would bring pressures, but almost always played cover 3 in the back, and you can attack the sidelines with sinking corners. Then late in game or in red zone situations, Michigan State would go more press man and just make you beat Michigan State athletically, and a lot of teams couldn't do it. But Michigan State wouldn't play it that way the entire game back then. They would play press quarters, which is a different way to do it, and those safeties were in shallow. Different era, different level of talent. Michigan State's aspiring to get to that level of talent now. But Rossi, yeah, he wants to stop the run. It's what he did in Minnesota. Not give up big plays, stop the run. And then from there, it's not like they're going to, like Jonathan Smith said, they don't want to be bend but don't break. They're not going to give up openings all over the place. they'll want to change looks. In the Western Michigan game, I thought it was interesting that Michigan State with coverages and pressures, I'd have to go back and chart it, but it occurred to me as I watched the game for the second and third time, I'm like, man, they're changing their defense every single play. But in this game, Boston College was doing more of the dictating with the way they're flooding the sidelines. And Michigan State was a little crossed up on some things. But I think the Michigan State defense is going to be a good defense week in and week out. You can be a good defense and still give up 41 points to Baylor in the 2014 Cotton Bowl. You can be a really good Narduzzi defense and still give up 40 points to eventual national champion Ohio State with J.T. Barrett and Ezekiel Elliott and those guys. So you can be a good defense and still give up 40 to a top 5 team. The 2014 team going out to play Mariota and Oregon and those guys giving up 40 points. You can be a good defense and still have some games where you give up points. And I think Michigan State's going to be a pretty good defense this year. But year 2, progress. But I think in the future, I'm not sure where the personnel is going to be next year on defense. But I would assume as players are in the program longer, I know it's more of a transient era of football with transfer portal and so forth. I think there'll be less of that on defense. There's going to be some transfer portal all the time. But as they want to get this program established, there's going to be more carryover and knowledge on the defense. And when that happens, you'll have fewer of these communication errors and, too deep a drop or too shallow of a drop in some of those loose screw situations. But I think Rossi's a good coach. I think it's going to show itself through the course of this season. They might get beat athletically by some excellent players against some opponents. But in terms of playing the structure like Iowa does, I think Michigan State's going to make progress toward doing that. And yes, you're right. I think he's, more toward the Big Ten narrative. Stopping the run, I think a lot of people want to do that. I mean, I don't think he's going to be Joe Lee Dunn and play zero coverage and blitz all the time and live by the sword, die by the sword. No. But they bring pressures, but you're not seeing pressures without a net. In other words, it's not like trapeze artists on a high wire without a net. There's usually nets back there. You're not seeing zero coverage. You're not seeing that type of gambling. But by the same token, they're changing pictures a lot. So I'm curious to see. I'm intrigued and curious and a little fascinated to see what happens with the defense going forward. Again, they don't have bell cow pass rusher. And again, these guys have been in the system for a short amount of time. All right, question 12. Jim, with the 11 o'clock kickoff time with USC, have you heard anything about the football team staff and how they will handle going out west for this time change? That's from Tyler and Okemos. The answer is they'd been planning before the season started months ago that they were planning to go to USC on Thursday. So last year, they went out and played Oregon on a Friday, went out on Thursday. They felt like 2 days is better. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's what Jonathan Smith said. So I think they're going out to USC on Thursday. So the 11 o'clock kickoff it's tough on your body clock, but it has no impact on their travel. Question 12. This is from somebody in Sterling Heights, Michigan. I didn't get their name. Sorry about that. It says, I think it's Jay Bannon. He said, you didn't get my basketball question last week. He says, can you please give us a report on the success or updates from Grind Week? I know we had several recruits in for it and the game. Would you please give an update on each attendee? I don't have an update on each attendee. It was Grind Week. I've heard that they felt like it went really successful. Everybody loved it. They always love it. The guy Jervis, number 39 player in the country, 6'5" guard. Hearing that Michigan State feels good, like they're making some progress there. So we're still looking into that. It's hard to cover those things, but we're looking into that. In basketball recruiting, like Izzo says, it's free agency, especially in transfer portal. Recruiting is one thing, but eventually it's like, okay, what are you offering for a lot of these guys? So you have to match what other people are offering. And then from there, then it's okay, yeah, do I like the coaches? Do I like the visit? It's not like the old days. If and when some of the recruiting was clean, then the visits and the coaches meant so much and everything and getting along with the players. Hate to say it, but that means less now. It's free agency, especially with some of these high-ranked guys. But as you can imagine, the people that were at Grind Week loved it. So I haven't heard about the guard that was there from Illinois, but SpartanMag will be covering that. We'll have something on that. And the Final Forum, the guys at On3, they've been doing a good job covering it nationally, and we'll get back to that. Speaking of which, I got to tell you about Roback. Should have done this a little bit earlier. But people, I want to tell you that the Roback deal is good for this, the 20% off deal that we have for Michigan State fans. They've got the Roback Activewear. You may have heard it on the Andy Staples podcast and some others. It's good stuff. And as Roback likes to say, there's only one way to describe Roback, and that's best fit, best feel. Just feels different. For those that aren't familiar with Roback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback has released some great new licensed items within the Roback Game Day collection, like some of these behind me right now, the Michigan State stuff. They've got a Michigan State collection, that hoodie right there. Right there, pretty sharp. You got the quarter zips and everything. Pretty good stuff. I'll tell you in a moment about a 20% off offer with a code that we have for you. But Roback, they've released these licensed items, and also they've got the new novel polo designs, clean hoodie look, quarter zip designs from some of your favorite schools. So even if you're looking for gift giving, if you've got friends that are, or family members that are fans of other schools, go check out the Roback stuff. But Michigan State stuff is definitely worth checking out also. Nobody else in the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. And it's not just the hoodies and quarter zips. You can check out the everyday shorts, the Delta Performance pants, super comfortable, elastic waistband, great fabric, Roback. It's the best. Spelled Roback, R-H-O-B-A-C-K. R-H-O-B-A-C-K.com. Go to Roback.com, check out the Michigan State stuff. Here's the promotional code, MSU20, MSU20. That's for 20% off for all new customers, and that's spelled R-H-O-B-A-C-K. 20% off on all performance polos, shorts, and more in the Michigan State stuff with the code, promotional code, MSU20, Roback.com. R-H-O-B-A-C-K, Roback.com. Thanks to our friends there at Roback for their support. With that one, let's see. There's the press box look. Should have went to that earlier, but we appreciate those of you that support our sponsors as well. All right. Question 13. This is the last question. Is it time to consider a replacement for Josh Eaton? Seems to be a real weak spot on the defense through 2 weeks. Has Rucker regressed? Also, what are the teams seeing on film regarding Malcolm Bell? Have not seen many targets go his way. That's from Adam in Grand Rapids. I think I just talked about that a moment ago. Josh Eaton, as we observe these things, Michigan State needs to see more out of him along the lines of what we heard about him in the spring. And had a little error on the one touchdown, and Rucker has not regressed. Came on and played well in relief. So, just like I said a moment ago, those are all things at the corner position. They've got some ability there, and competition is a good thing there. And we'll see the next slice of competition this week against Youngstown State here at Spartan Stadium. And we appreciate everybody coming in and checking us out. We're going to run along now. Friday football warm-ups is all done. I'd like to do SpartanMag live this way and maybe a second one for the Friday football warm-up midweek, something like that. Can't believe it's Thursday already. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for being a Spartan Magger. Take care of everybody and be good. We'll see you next time.